Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I have recently I've been doing stories, talking to people about their real stories occurring with their healthcare, how it's handled in different places. And luckily, yesterday I received an email from Jonathan Hall in Stavanger, Norway. I hope I said that right, Jonathan.
That sounds right.
And he had a story, and I asked him to come on to Politics Done Right to tell us a little bit about that. So, Jonathan, first of all, you are from the United States of America. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And what blew you over to Europe, to Norway?
Okay. Well, that's another story. But in 1984, in the beginning of November of 1984, we had an election in the United States. I was working in Kentucky, in my hometown there, Lexington. And, that Wednesday, man, I looked at that big map with all those red states on it. And I said, the hell with this. I can't work with these people. I'm just gonna run, and I hung around to Thanksgiving, and then I was gone.
Also, you are braver than most. A lot of people felt that way, and they decided to just, some were able to leave, and lucky you were able to get out and do what you wanted to do. But anyhow, one of the issues that I speak a whole lot about is Medicare for all. I speak a lot about healthcare. And what we find here is that we have a healthcare system that I consider very evil, but most Americans have a tendency to believe that this is the best you have. This is the best one can expect. I was happy to hear from you because you have a story to tell. So what I would love for you to do is to tell us your story with healthcare in Norway, where you're at right now.
Okay. I've lived in Norway for almost 33 years now. And the health care that I have received myself has been excellent. Fortunately, thankfully, I haven't had any serious problems myself, but I've been in the hospital once for an appendicitis, and it was fixed, and I was there for several days. They wouldn't let me out until they were absolutely sure that everything was fixed. This is 15, 20 years ago. 2 years ago, our son, who was 17 at the time, got in a motorcycle accident. He had, as a result of that, he had massive brain trauma. And they put him in an induced coma. He was in an induced coma for about 6 weeks. After that, most of that time was in the ICU. Then after that, there were several weeks when he was recovering before he was actually starting to get a few words, starting to talk again and learn how to talk, learn how to walk. Then he was in rehabilitation in the nearby city of Bergen, a specialist rehabilitation center for trauma victims, with complete physical rehabilitation, physical therapy, speech therapy, manual therapy, with just a whole team of specialists looking after him. Wonderful people, amazing health professionals doing all this work around him, pretty much 24 hours a day. The point, I guess, is that this was free. We didn't pay anything for any of this. And I don't know how to get that reality across to you, to your viewers. It's I can't put it any more simply than that. And one thing is even more important than that is that it was simple. There was nobody to deal with except for health professionals. They looked at the patient. When you go to a doctor here, well, as I said in my email earlier, I didn't have to sign my name until several weeks after this was all over, when I was applying for a reimbursement for some travel expenses. Then they wanted me to fill out some forms.
So let me ask you this. Here it is that your son got taken care of free of charge. Well, we know it's not really free of charge. Everybody pays into the system because you pay taxes, but that is how it's done. So what you're telling me now is you even got reimbursed for the travel that you had to do to take care of your son.
Right, back and forth to the hospital and the rehabilitation center, several trips, both me and his mother. Sure, nothing's free. Everybody knows that. I'm not going to try to fool you or put out some kind of utopian bull thing. It's of course we pay taxes. They're moderate. It costs. Life is expensive, but I get back to this, and we could go into the details about the taxes and stuff here. I compared it with people I've talked to in the United States, and they said, "Oh, well, that's not too bad."
Because you know what is amazing, Jonathan, is a lot of people don't realize if you have to have insurance, right? Because you want to make sure you're taken care of, and your insurance is costing you $15,000 a year, which is pretty inexpensive here in the United States. That is effectively another $15,000 a year tax you're paying anyway.
Right.
The only difference is that it's going to a whole lot of rich fat cats who who skim that to make a few people profits. You don't have that in Norway.
Right. Like I was saying, when you deal with a health professional here, the guy looks you in the eye and he says, "Okay, I have some bad news for you. This is a medical crisis that is going to change your life in drastic ways." Or he looks at you. He looks you in the eye and he says, "This is a problem. This is an appendicitis. We can fix this. We've done it 1,000 times. You're going to be in the hospital a few days." But what he doesn't do is it doesn't say, "Here's all these forms to fill out. Who is your insurer? Who is your provider? Who is are we approved by your insurance company? Who's paying for this?" It's just not there. And that's the beauty of the system. Not how much it costs. It's cheaper. As I put in my mail, I looked up these figures. 17.8% of the United States GDP is used on health care. In Norway, it's 10.4%.
You know what is interesting? Before you said that, Jonathan, what I'd like folks to understand, because I'm an engineer by training before I turned political activist, and all I believe in are numbers. And the interesting thing is the difference in those numbers, because you have to admit, let's say people in Norway and America, they are, of similar health. Of course, Norway probably healthier because better healthcare, but that differential that you see in GDP is exactly the amount of money you could calculate is extracted to enrich the few that controls a medical industrial complex. It's amazing.
Yeah. What do they do to deserve all of these profits?
Right.
I don't know. So that's our situation here. It's been like this since 1910, I think. Mm-hmm. Right. It's just a matter, of course, that your health care is part of what you pay for when you make this contract with society. That I'm going to go to work, pay taxes, and when I go to the doctor, when my neighbor goes to the doctor, even if I'm healthy all my life, when my neighbor goes to the doctor, I can go over to him and take him a box of candy and say, get well soon. I don't have to worry about him losing his house. It's
what I think you mentioned that Michael Moore was over there and the system was so good. He didn't put it into his film Sicko because he think it would be unbelievable. Many people wouldn't believe that a system could be created that is that good.
I saw this somewhere, and I haven't had a chance to look it up again. I think you probably find it on YouTube. He did an extra report from Norway as a kind of addendum or appendix to Sicko. Mm-hmm. So it's whatever. It's a 5-minute report that didn't go into the film. Mm-hmm. So the system here is more streamlined and cheaper and easier than in a lot of countries.
Now, did your son have to wait in a waiting room at all when he had that emergency?
No, it was right into. He was way out in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. We live in some of the most beautiful scenic country in the world. It's just amazing, and he was out in a place where it's kind of hard to get to. So they took him from the top of this road. They took him in an ambulance to a nearby village, where he was transported by helicopter to the hospital.
And how much did the helicopter cost you?
What?
That's my point. I was being funny because over here, when they live flight you, you're talking about $8,000 to $10,000.
Right. I don't know how you deal with it. I honestly don't. I've spent. Now, I was fairly young when I moved. I was pretty much just out of school, and I'd been working for a couple of years, but I hadn't really started on an adult life. I hadn't been dealing with all of these real problems that you all do. But when I talk to somebody there who has gone through some of this, and they start talking about co-pays and providers and terms that I don't know anything about, I'm just like, you want to go to a doctor and you want to look them in the eye and say, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? What is this that's affecting my family? How are we going to deal with this? You don't want to go in there and start talking about insurance.
Well, let me just tell you, my daughter just had a stroke 2 weeks ago. She's 20. Yeah,
I heard about that, and I hope that
She's doing much better than any of us would have expected, and in fact, she went to her first class less than 2 weeks after her stroke. She's still half blind in the eye, but my daughter is a trooper. She is a trooper.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, Jonathan, why I also wanted your story is you make it quite clear that you have an acquaintance that died at 50 years old in the United States. Tell us a story.
Well, the story is that, you grow up with these people, and I've known this guy since I was 18 or so. We went to school together, and we worked together. We played in a band together. We worked at the theater together, and he was such a charming guy and so funny and so full of life and amusement and love of life. And he had some what started out as just minor health problems. He got some problems with his kidneys, and that didn't get taken care of because, as I put in my email, I said that he was a musician. I guess you'd call it an itinerant musician. He worked from day to day. He was always on the fringes of what we would call an adult employment situation. And over the years, he got his treatment in emergency rooms.
Right.
He couldn't afford to go anywhere else. So they would send him home as soon as they could. They would say, no, we can't treat this. We can give you something for the pain. We can put a plaster on it, but you don't put a plaster on, advanced, kidney stones and later on kidney failure that was treated in the emergency room. And with, I don't know about the admittance to the hospital at that time, but, it was just a complete fuck up. Mm-hmm. How can you deal with this without having just huge resources? So he, a couple of years before he died, there were several of us who realized how bad it was because he wasn't complaining about this. He was just going and fixing things up as best he could. And, we took up a collection. I don't know if it was together, it was a couple of $1,000s or something, but it was really nothing. And it was too little too late. It was a couple of years later that, somebody called me up and said, look, Matt went into the emergency room last night, and while we were waiting there, he had some kind of seizure, and they couldn't save him. So it's the wrong kind of treatment to give to a patient.
Our system kills, and that's what I'm trying to express, Jonathan, to our audience is that we have a medical system that is not only corrupt, it's not only evil, it's not only immoral, but it actually kills. And people know that
unhealthy, at least.
Yes. And people know, people that run this system know that they're just using the people as income sources as opposed to trying to help them heal. I'm talking about those on the top. I'm not talking about the doctors. I'm not talking about the nurses. These are wonderful people, most of them. But the system just doesn't work. Look, in closing, what I want to talk to you about is, first of all, have you been back to the United States recently, or?
I was there last time in October of 2016. Mm-hmm. And I was there in time to see the last debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And I realized that, we were in real danger of having this guy elected. It was a shocking experience. I wasn't just in rural Kentucky that time. I was also in New Orleans,
right,
and Los Angeles. So I had, I got to see. I got some pleasure out of the trip as well.
Okay.
But sure, it's spooky to go back, and I'll be going back in a few weeks, and. I hope that, I wish everybody there the best. I think that America is so full of wonderful, amazing people.
Yes.
And they deserve better.
Yes.
And they deserve a democracy. They deserve to have one vote count, one vote, one person count. Not all of this rigmarole like we've had in Iowa, like we have with the
Electoral College.
I still vote. I'm going to vote in the global primary in the beginning of March, Super Tuesday.
So you will be voting, yeah.
I'll be voting in November, of course.
Well, let me tell you, Jonathan, I am going to post your videos and this interview, let people know what can be. And I am going to be doing a whole lot of these to ensure that we let Americans know that there's a better way. What we have here is a mainstream media that tries its best not to inform as they should. I mean, all our media have the ability to come out to Norway, to go to Sweden, to go to all these countries that have similar systems where people are taken care of. That our media don't do that tells us that it's a whole plutocracy that no matter what party is running, somehow they stick together to ensure that we have this corrupt, evil, and immoral healthcare system. Thank you so kindly, Jonathan Hall. Some final words that you'd like to say.
Well, power to the people, just keep working, keep fighting, and take care of yourselves through all of this, through all this corruption. We still live in a beautiful world, and we need to take care of each other.
Jonathan Hall from...
Thank you very much, Egberto.
Muchas gracias from Stavanger, Norway. You have a wonderful day, sir. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.